What if your background is not your limitation, but your qualification? He was born to a single mother, raised in poverty, mocked, overlooked, and underestimated. But one prayer changed everything. This is not just a story of a pastor. It is a story of obedience, faith, and a God who lifts men from ashes to altars. Sit back, listen carefully, because this story may change the way you see your own life. Welcome to Olu Beauty African Folktales channel. Here we tell it the way it is. Have you subscribed? If not, run kitty kitty, run kata kata. Subscribe, like, comment and share. Share it with your family and friends and touch that bell button so that you'll be notified each time we put out new video. Grab your popcorn, sit JJ and enjoy yourself. Let's go there. Elijah Uzoma was born in a small town in the hills of eastern Nigeria to a struggling single mother, a woman whose strength was forged by hardship and faith. His father was absent from his life, leaving his mother to shoulder responsibility alone in a world that was rarely kind to single women. Their home was modest, a single room with cracked walls and a leaking roof. When rain fell, buckets were arranged carefully around the floor. Hunger was a familiar visitor, and hope was often their only meal. Yet, every morning, before the sun rose, Elijah would see his mother kneeling beside her bed. God, she would whisper, I don't have much to give him, but I give him back to you, she prayed. Those prayers quietly shaped Elijah's destiny. At school, he was mocked for his worn clothes and his background. Expectations were low. Many assumed he would grow up struggling just like his mother. But even as a child, Elijah carried a deep, unexplainable sense that his life was meant for something more. As Elijah grew, he became unusually drawn to prayer. Church was not just a place to him, it felt like home. He listened closely to sermons, absorbing words that seemed to speak directly to his heart. Sometimes, when friends were sick or troubled, Elijah prayed for them quietly. Simple prayers, no rehearsed words. Yet, on more than one occasion, things changed. Fevers broke, fear lifted, peace returned. He never spoke about it, he only wondered. By the time he entered university, the stirring inside him had grown stronger. He began leading small prayer meetings under trees, in classrooms, in student hostels. He spoke with sincerity, not sophistication. Some listened, others laughed and said, another poor boy trying to be a pastor, Enokwa, they said. Elijah heard the mockery, but the pull in his spirit would not let him stop. After graduating with degrees in history and business studies, Elijah took a respectable job in an international agency, a job many dreamed of. He worked with global teams, handled communications, and saw life through a different lens. For the first time in his life, he could provide for his mother without fear. The struggle eased. Relatives praised him. Friends admired him. Outwardly, life was stable. Inwardly, Elijah was restless. But every morning, before dawn, he prayed in his small apartment, asking God to clarify the calling he had felt since youth. And he said, Oh God, what do you want from me? He prayed. Then the dreams began. Crowds praying, hands lifted, voices crying out to God from different nations. One night, a clear voice spoke in his dream, and the voice said, This world is not where you belong. You must build a place where broken lives meet a healing God. Elijah woke up trembling. Elijah tried to ignore the call. He focused on his career, but peace eluded him. Eventually, during a session of intense prayer and surrender, he made a decision that confused everyone around him. He resigned from his job. Friends warned him, relatives questioned him, even some pastors advised him against it, saying, "Ministry is not prayer alone, no," they said. "You need structure, backing, and approval." But Elijah believed that obedience was safer than comfort. He began a small fellowship that later became Streams of Grace Assembly. Services were held in borrowed spaces. Attendance was small. Offerings were barely enough to survive. Some Sundays, fewer than 10 people came. Yet, Elijah prayed as though thousands were listening. Other pastors laughed at him. Some said, another prayer boy that will soon disappear. Others accused him of pride because he refused to submit to their control. Bills piled up, rent was unpaid. There were days Elijah wanted to quit, but every dawn he prayed, he preached with conviction, tears often filling his eyes. He remembered hunger, he remembered his mother's prayers, and he trusted God completely. Just when the world was shutting down under a global pandemic, Elijah felt prompted to pray online every morning with his church members at 5 a.m. No publicity, no marketing. He called it Morning Fire Altar. On the process, one night he had a revelation which says prayer is not limited by walls. So he went live online with daily prayer sessions, which he called New Dawn Prophetic Declarations, a platform where people from every nation could log in and pray together. What began with a few dozen viewers soon became millions. Screens light up all over the world as hearts were healed, burdens lifted, and miracles whispered into existence. Every morning, believers gathered at their phones like they were entering a digital altar of fire. Millions listened, millions prayed, lives changed. The name New Dawn Prophetic Declarations became a beacon of hope, not because of the man on the screen, but because of the power that showed up in hearts around the globe. Then testimonies started pouring in. A woman from Brazil joined the prayer silently. She had been barren for 11 years. During one session, Elijah prayed and said, "Wombs that doctors have called graves receive life." And the woman got pregnant and had twins. A man from the UK joined with medical reports showing stage 4 cancer. During a prayer session, Pastor Elijah instructed and said, "Lay your hand where the sickness is." 3 months later, doctors confirmed him no trace of cancer. A businesswoman from Kenya testified that after prayers, a bank mistakenly cleared her loan and later confirmed it was irreversible. A young man testified that after joining the prayer for 14 days, nightmares stopped, addictions broke, and peace returned. Another testified that a long-standing legal battle ended unexpectedly through this prayer. In all this, Elijah remained careful. "This is not about a man," he said. "It is about what God can do when people pray." What began quietly soon spread across nations. As the prayer movement grew, scrutiny followed. Some pastors questioned the platform, others accused Pastor Elijah of exaggeration. A few openly criticized him, uncomfortable with the attention the prayer gatherings attracted. Pastor Elijah chose silence. He responded not with arguments, but with humility and consistency. and the prayers continued. Years later, Pastor Elijah Uzoma stood on the stage at the International Prayer Conference in London, a city he had once only seen on screens. Leaders, pastors, ministers, and everyday people filled the auditorium. They came not for flash or fame, but because they had heard testimonies of healing, restoration, peace, and inexplicable divine encounters. Church plants had spread from Canada to South Africa, from Texas to Britain. But Pastor Elijah always said the same thing. He said, "This movement is not about me. It's about what God can do when you believe." And every meeting began with the same proclamation, which says, "What God cannot do does not exist." Pastor Elijah married Faith, his partner, confidant, and fellow prayer warrior. Together, they built churches, supported widows, encouraged youth, and met the hurting. Pastor Elijah never forgot his own beginnings. The boy who once prayed beside an empty rice bowl now stood among global leaders, not because he sought power, but because he pursued God's heart. His story became an invitation. So, whatever you carry today, pain, doubt, poverty, rejection, is not your end. It is your invitation to purpose. So, guys, this is the story of a man not born into wealth, accolades, or privileges, but one chosen by grace, shaped by trials, and lifted for purpose. Every step of his journey echoed one truth, which says, God uses broken backgrounds to raise global ministries when obedience meets faith. So, guys, if you feel unseen today, if your background feels like a limitation, if all you have is faith and obedience, remember this: God does not start with perfection. He starts with surrender and he finishes with purpose. Thank you for watching. This is where our story ends. But before we end it, let's look into our moral lessons. Your background does not disqualify you from greatness. God often starts with those the world ignores. Obedience is more powerful than comfort. Peace comes from purpose, not security. Prayer is not limited by location. God answers faith, not geography. Criticism is proof of impact. When God lifts you, resistance will come. Humility preserves elevation. Pride destroys what grace builds. In conclusion, this story reminds us that greatness does not begin with privilege. It begins with surrender. A son raised by a single mother, shaped by poverty, and strengthened by prayer became proof that God still rewrites destinies. When faith meets obedience, ordinary lives become extraordinary testimonies. The same God who lifted a poor fatherless son is still lifting men and women today. Your beginning does not define your ending. Your pain does not cancel your purpose. If God could turn poverty into a global ministry, imagine what he can do with your obedience. Thank you once again for watching. Please, if you enjoyed this story, please like this video. It helps us to grow our channel. Subscribe for more powerful African stories that inspire and teach life lessons. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new story. Share this video with someone who believes that your beginning does not define your ending. Comment below. Tell us how you feel about this story. And remember this truth: what God starts, he finishes. What God cannot do does not exist. This is where our story ends. God bless you all. Love you. Bye-bye. Mwah.